My
All right,
pen, I
well,
just stayed here.
First of all, thank you again for letting us be here today. Jim McCreary and myself are your contact people for all things Viega. And we appreciate this opportunity here to help give you insight and education about our products so that we make it easier for you to sell them. Jim is the industrial manager, and he's been with Viega for quite a number of years now. And I started with Viega in June of 17, so I'm the district sales manager, and we obviously want to make sure we're giving you all the information so you guys can sell the product. So today, wanted to go over a couple of things. First thing, just as a little bit of a history about Viega. Some of you may know, some of you may not, but in 1899, Viega basically was formed by two brothers, and they wanted to make brass beer taps. So the genesis of the whole company was beer taps, and now all this innovative products up to this day. Every year we have new products and new things to sell. So it's always exciting, and it's the 5th generation of family ownership now. So it's quite remarkable to see a company of its size still family owned and run very efficiently. And press came over to this country in ProPress. We're talking MegaPress today, but press came over in the 80s, okay, or 1999 actually to this country. And we came out with MegaPress, the subject of today, in 2012. So what we're going to do is talk about MegaPress and MegaPress G. And go to the next slide. There we go. The newest innovation in press technology. So you can see it's black iron pipe that you're pressing there. There's the jaws, of course. It comes in green and yellow. And we'll go into the various, because we also have other applications. But essentially you've got a carbon steel fitting, all right? It's zinc and nickel coated, so it has that anti-corrosion resistance aspect to it. So if it's going to be in conditions where there might be a little bit of moisture or excessive water or something like that, it's designed to be able to resist those kind of attacks. The two main sealing elements that are available is EPDM and HNBR. Typically for some of these applications you see here, water, fire protection, gas, vacuum, air, etc. As all Viega press fittings have, you have Smart Connect feature, and it ensures all connections are pressed prior to commissioning. So when you're fitting the system together, you're putting all the fittings onto the pipe ends, then as you're pressing, if you forgot to press, that's what's going to highlight the fact that if you're air pressure testing, you'll hear a whistle, or if you're water pressure testing, you will see it drip, 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 okay? Stainless steel grip ring, we're going to get into the components of the fitting itself so that you know what it entails. And this is going to provide the mechanical strength, the stainless steel bite ring. We'll pass the fittings around so that you can see that. I brought a few fittings in. What we can do is kind of give you one of these to take a look at, pass it around. That's the stainless steel grip ring. Be careful, it is sharp like a razor blade. It's made to bite into the hard steel. And there's a separator ring in because you don't want that bite ring to be biting on the sealing element. The sealing is a very important component of that fitting. And you have over 250 configurations, so whether you're talking couplings, elbows, T's, reducers, adapters, etc. And MegaPress is a registered trademark name, so when you hear MegaPress, you're referring to Viega's black iron pipe system. It fits all standard press tools, minimal tooling investment for somebody who already is using the 340 for ProPress. Okay. Any questions about that slide? Next slide is, all right, so features and benefits. This is important to the customer because this is the reason why they choose this over other systems. There's a lot of ways to join pipe out there, and this is just one of them. So again, this is for black iron or galvanized steel pipe. This it retains the structural integrity of the pipe. In other words, what they're saying is, instead of threading, when you're joining the pipe, you're putting the fittings in there and pressing, you're not actually removing any of the pipe itself, whereas you would be in threading. So the weakest point of the pipe becomes where the threads are. You're taking pipe away, okay? So I'll pass that around there, and you can see that. All right, so no threading equipment or accessories needed because basically you're taking a non-threaded pipe and you're putting it into the fittings and then pressing. Now your pipe system is joined. So the piping systems are installed using the same practice as traditional methods, so you're not really doing anything different. It's just that the fittings are different. No welding or firewash. The features and benefits of that are, number one, you have just one person doing the work. You don't have to have a person stand beside you with the fire extinguisher waiting for you to have a spark go in a bad way. Insurance companies are obviously charging more liability insurance to contractors nowadays because of, you know, they're using fire or spark, therefore they have a higher risk of starting a fire or an incident. You can use this install under flow conditions, so essentially if the pipe is leaking and you need to replace that part, put a new fitting in, you cut off the pipe, you put the coupling in, and you press and you're ready to go again. You don't have to drain the whole building, because for welding or soldering or something like that, you would have to dry the pipe up perfectly. And it's clean because there's no oils or debris. You're not using a threading device, so you don't have to have the threading oil nearby. It reduces the installation time, and here's the big key point. If you're talking to a customer who really is new to this, maybe they're using our ProPress, but they don't know much about our MegaPress, this is where you're going to get the big bang for the buck, because labor costs are so high in the overall prospect of the job. So more jobs in less time, and the measurement basically is between 30 and up to 60% reduction in time, because you're going to be very consistent in the way you do this practice of joining MegaPress to black pipe. It's very reliable, and because it is consistent every time, you know that you don't have somebody who was maybe a little tired on the 50th fitting and they didn't thread it as good or over thread it or something like that, or where they're welding, they didn't weld it as good, and that's because they were tired at the end of the day, or they started out the day tired or something like that. So it's the same proven press technology. Anybody have any questions about that slide?
Yes, on the pipe that we can use with it, we can use Schedule 10, Schedule 40, Schedule 80,
And Schedule 5.
and
also.
Schedule 5.
Yeah, 5 through
Okay.
40 for up to 2 inches. And then when you go to our MegaPress XL, which incidentally isn't on this slide group, but we'll talk about it because you have the one right there in front of you, that big fitting. But yeah, Schedule 5 through 40 for up to 2 inches.
Okay,
And then obviously 10 through 44 up to 4 inches, the 2.5, 3, and 4.
okay.
But that was a great question, thank you. Okay, here we go in talking about the MegaPress. Notice there's no G after that, so we're talking about hydronics, low pressure steam stuff, water, green dot, as you see right there. And green dot is always on one with an EPDM sealing element. You have the size of the fitting on it, manufacturer name, manufacturer date code, UMC label, UL, so all the standards, and made in Germany and USA. There we go. And again, it says MegaPress. If it had a G here, it would be talking about the yellow dot, and it would be talking about the sealing element, which we're going to go into later. But here's your operating temperatures, okay? Now this is technical information, but it's good to know, just, have this at your fingertips sometimes, because you may get a question. Somebody says, yeah, but I'm going to use it for this. Can I use it within this temperature range? You say, oh my gosh, yeah, if that's green, it's 0 to up to 250 degrees. So you say, yeah, you can, because you asked me what the operating temperature was. It was going to be 220, so you're good. Operating pressures, 200 PSI max, okay? Now we test all of our fittings up to 600 PSI and they hold. But again, for all the standards that you're talking about, they only had to meet, for 125 PSI or 200, depending on the liquid or the gas that's going through it. Hydronics, this is a good little application chart, and it's in the book you have. So you'll have in the one page, it's near the back, it has a listing of all of our fittings, tells you what sealing element goes with it or is available with it in the application. So 90% of the things you're going to talk about to your customers are going to be on that chart, okay? He has it correct. Yep, it's got all the sealing elements on it. Yeah, you have it too, Christy. So there you go. You've got hydronics, low pressure steam, industrial gases, compressed air, no oil, okay? Because if you're going to have their compressed air with oil in the lines, then there is an application which we'll go into for the yellow sealing element. Fire sprinkler, and then the vacuum lines. That's a big one, because that's the one that actually Airlines is the one that Vic and I sold over PCA there in November, and they keep adding to it. Vic tells me they keep buying more and more, and they love the system now. There we go. Now, you notice that there's a G there now, so anytime you see MegaPress and then a G after it, what's the G stand for?
Gas.
That's it. And then MegaPress G fittings markings, it's always going to have a yellow dot. And it's quite easy to see, obviously, because then you look inside the fitting, and then you see the sealing element. Okay? And again, it has the same components we showed you earlier. It has the bite ring and the separator ring and the sealing element. So the CSA in there indicates certification for ANSI, CSA, LC4. These are the certifications that say you can use it on gas and in concealed spaces, so if you're putting it behind walls and things. yellow rectangle identifies Viega MegaPress G fitting as a certified gas for fuel oil, okay? So you can't see that one on there right there, but it's on. Should be on there, right, Jim?
Yeah, on MegaPress G.
Okay, so, the 125 identifies the CSA maximum pressure rating for fuel. Remember we talked about just a few seconds ago. So for your gases, you're looking at 125 PSI, and the size of fittings on there as well. So this is just like the green dot. It has all this information on it, okay, that you'll find somewhere on stamped or painted or such. And there you go. There's your MegaPress G fitting, showing you a little yellow dot like I have there. And then there's your operating temperature, so -40 up to 180. And then operating pressures 125 for fuel gas. And again, if it's other approved applications, it's going to be up to 200 PSI, but most of your gases are always going to be the 125. Natural gas, see, lubricants and oils. So this is a helpful little chart, and again, it's in there. And remember I said earlier that the compressed air, vacuum line, etc., that's when you have those kind of things, because it has oil in it. And the HMBR sealing element has engineered properties into it to resist what hydrocarbons would normally do to rubber. It would attack it and kind of break it down. So just like the EPDM, it's got resistance to chloride for chlorine and things. And we'll show you, I guess, when it's pressed in the cutaways, that those sealing elements are totally encapsulated in the metal. So it's not like ozone will attack it, sunlight doesn't attack it. It is completely encapsulated in that metal, so it's locked in for life. There we go, and there's the two beside each other. These little labels you see on here are just basically little stepwise reminders when you're installing it, so the technician can kind of have that as a just quick prep and quick install. But it's meant to be torn off and thrown away, but a lot of guys just say, hey, I already installed it, I pressed it, I'm moving on to the next, and they leave the stickers on, and that's okay. They're just meant to be peeled off if you want to, okay? So it's easy to identify the differences, green and yellow. And there we go, we talked about the components earlier. You saw the grip ring that was passed around in that fitting, and that's 420 stainless steel, so that indicates the hardness of the stainless. And the bidirectional teeth keep it from wobbling, because if it's only facing one way, maybe the fitting would possibly move one way only, but you don't want it to move. And it ensures that it's locked in place, okay? And of course, I don't know if it's on this slideshow, but we actually meet California earthquake standards for surviving the kind of tremors and things that earthquakes can cause. And I have this certification in a letter that if any of your customers ever asked you, I'm worried about the application way up here in the ceiling and we have a lot of vibration, etc. Well, this is something we could offer. I'd love to give them a little bit more. Okay, now this is the regular MegaPress, and there's a 304 stainless steel grip ring. And again, it's just the same thing. It's a different component of the black EPDM sealing element. And there you go. There's a description of EPDM. It's shiny black, okay? And then HMBR, just kind of like an opaque yellow. Ribbed at the pipe surface. Differs from standard ProPress sealing due to small irregularities of the pipe surface. So it has like an extra little rib in there. Okay, Smart Connect feature, we talked about that earlier. MegaPress and MegaPress G, half-inch up to 2. And keep in mind, now this slide shows a couple years old. I couldn't download the newest one, it wouldn't let me, so Jim and I brought along the 2.5, 3, and 4-inch MegaPress XL, which you folks have already sold, and that was in the job at PCA. But that's the Smart Connect is a patent feature. We design it so nobody can copy it. And it's third-party tested, so that it basically proves that if you forgot to press one of those fittings, it will let you know before you leave the job site, whereas other materials may not do that, meaning competitors, and therefore you have 3,000 gallons of water on the floor 2 weeks later because it actually showed that it was a false positive. It was not pressed, but it came through the pressure test. And testing all systems shall be carried out in accordance with the local authority having jurisdiction. Obviously, that's recommended. I know some guys don't pressure test, they just do the job and move on. So we always say to cover our recommendations, you gotta point that out. And then Viega recommends air testing of gas systems to a minimum of 0.5 PSI. smart connectors designed so that unpressed MegaPress connection will not hold the test above a half PSI. So that's like just you breathing. There we go. And again, keep in mind, this is old, so it's 4-inch sizes now.
Well, not for gas though yet.
Yeah, not for gas. After 2 inches, it's still not approved for gas use yet. Thank you for pointing out, I almost slid through that. Remember I said earlier when you asked a question, schedule 5 through 40 for the 2-inch, and then schedule 10 through 40 for the 2.5, 3, and 4. And then there's your standard specification, ASTM A53. So these are things you probably don't get into, but if somebody asked you, you know it's in the little book there that'll tell you the standards that we meet. Any questions about those? Another standards, okay. For seamless carbon steel pipe, high temperature service, welded. That's a picture, I know Jim knows that one. That's the one up in Boston. That was the first MegaPress job we did in this country. And you can see how it looks like artwork, the way it's done. It looks really nice. Nice and clean. And there you go, there's your approved applications. Worldwide, there is 3,000, over 3,000 that our products are approved in, but these are probably 99% of what you would talk about on an everyday basis.
Is there somewhere on the website we can get the rest if we need?
If you have a contractor that is going to ask about a certain application, you can reach out to us, Jim or I. We have a special form that we have to fill out, and basically it gets filled out with MSD sheet safety data stuff and what operating temperatures, pressure. There's certain questions we have to have filled out, and then we send it into our engineers, and then they'll sign off if they say this is an application that's acceptable, and if it's not, we'll get a
Does that take a while to get done, or?
Jim can answer that. He's done quite a few of them.
It takes 2 to 3 days to get the reply back from Germany, but the answer to your question is no, it's not on the website.
Okay,
The 3,000 approved applications is actually not on the website.
okay.
So
So I would have to call.
I would ask you to call the 800 number on the back of the literature to ask for tech services.
Okay,
Then they'll go to the G drive, which was internal to Viega, and they'll tell you when it was approved and last,
okay.
and for what parameters.
Because I do have a customer that calls from time to time, and I'm like, I don't know, I have to find out.
Yeah.
Usually Bob Staub will find out for me,
Okay.
you know.
Anything we
Does
can
it
do to
slow
help
you
you?
down? Does that slow you down?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would rather have it right though,
Mm-hmm.
when you're dealing, I mean, if you're dealing with the majority on this,
Yeah.
and there's something not on this, I would rather have a very highly trained engineer looking at it
Right.
rather than a.
Oh, yeah.
You know, the Viega way, which is always an option for us, is to call Mike or me, and then if we don't know, like, you guys sell a lot of the calcium carbonate systems, that's not shown up there, but, you know, sodium hydroxide, big, which is a tough application to handle. And what is it, over in York, West Chemicals, they use it a lot. So we probably could give you, you know, an immediate answer.
Right.
And if it's not, it's 2 to 3 days to get the form back from Germany.
Right.
And we've seen them both. I think you were working out there at the potato chip factory with one of the salespeople, and that was one that they sent all the information, filled out the form completely, and our engineer said, probably not a good application for us. So, yeah, you win a few, you lose a few. It's obviously the right thing to do, though, to say, I don't want to put our fittings through that because you don't know if it's going to hold. You don't want customers being unsatisfied with such a high-quality product. And then the next thing is, and I was going to interject Jim into this because this is something he likes to really focus on more now in light of you know, some things we've noticed in the field, and that is there's sometimes people not prepping the pipes correctly. So I'll defer over to Jim, and I'll turn up the slide here to pipe prep and things like that.
Okay, good, and prep.
Yep.
You want to cut to a right angle, but don't go crazy. Obviously, when we insert the fitting over the pipe, we need to make contact with the sealing element 360. So you cut to a right angle, but as you can see here, it doesn't have to be 90 degrees because it's pretty forgiving. Then you do a quick deburr. Good practice at that time would be to ream the pipe. You want to take any oils and rust off. You want to make the end smooth. There's a chart that we have that you may want us to email to you. because it seems to me from an inside sales perspective, this is gonna be a very common question that you will get. And if it doesn't have lacquer on it, which is the first diagram, there's absolutely no prep needed. But 90% of what we're gonna see is gonna be sked 10, sked 40 pipe. What the installer does is that he approximates where the sealing element's gonna make contact with the pipe. Then he takes his abrasive plumber's cloth and he just maybe does 10 passes on it. So there's a diagram here. I'll point my finger to it here,
And it's up here too.
right
Jim.
here. It shows that there you go. Where the sealing element makes contact with the pipe, we want to make it smooth. So it takes maybe 10 passes on the abrasive cloth to do that. And then you insert the pipe into the fitting until it bottoms out. Then we mark the pipe. Am I stealing any of your thunder?
No, because,
Okay.
yeah, it's perfect.
So what we do is we insert and you mark. And why do we do that? If it's an inspected job, we made reference to the local authority that has jurisdiction. Here, if it's a gas utility, UGI, PP&L, which is now a different company, but they're going to have an opinion. So they come out and they're going to have our installation manual in their hands, and in there it says that we should follow the latest installation procedures that the manufacturer has. It's listed by their code. So the code guy will have his book in hand, and in there it says we should mark the pipe. So the installers, if they don't mark the pipe and they've pressed it, tell them to go back and mark it. Because when the inspector looks at it and he sees it's marked, he just keeps on going. He has no reason for him to ask any questions. The other reason is, if the installer, typically they'll go around and they'll dry fit and then they'll do all their connections at one time. So they'll do all their presses in the end. If they come back and they see that the fitting mark sits proud at the end of the fitting, they know to insert all the way before they go ahead and press. So that's a little bit about the installation procedures. I'm going to take the opportunity now to talk about deflection. This end here is both a US Imperial and a metric. So it'll be a different set of jaws for metric than it is for US, but the fitting is the same. A big part of our work is done with cruise ships. Cruise ships are almost metric. So we designed one fitting to accommodate both. So you're going to see a little deflection here. Guys that are typically working in ProPress, they don't, the tolerances are held tighter. So this to them is a little different. So we warn them right up front as to why that is. Then when they press, they'll use a scissor jaw, and they'll do that, and it'll torque the fitting straight, so that if we were doing exposed sprinkler in this room, a little north-south movement on the pipe is okay visually, but any east-west movement, it just looks awful. So it doesn't change the integrity of our joint to look awful. It's just that we want everything that we do to look good when we're done. So there's a little couple of things that the installers have told us about that they think they're little tricks of the trade. That is to alternate if you can. But if you're right up against the wall and you can't come in from the other side, go ahead and complete your press. Again, you got a really good, solid, consistent joint. You don't have to worry about reliability. The other thing to keep in mind is, after you've pressed it, it's designed as a swing joint. So let's say we had a 90 and we were pressing and we were moving fast and we meant to press it at a 90 degree and we accidentally pressed it like that. You're going to have to lay into it, put a cheater bar on it, relocate the fitting, and then go ahead and repress. You can repress as many times as you want, because as you can imagine, when those jaws meet at the post end part of the press, there's nothing to overpress. Jaws meet, that's it. So go ahead and swing it. You can swing it under pressure if you want. The book says if you move it more than 5 degrees of travel, you need to repress. I think it's a good practice. Anytime you move it, go ahead and repress it. So let's see, that is the installation instruction for 1/2 through 4 inch. Doesn't change when you get into what we call XL. Your ProPress XL, same scenario, 2.5 through 4 inch.
Right.
We call it MegaPress XL. Why a 420 grip ring? high carbon content. So on a gas system, your static ground is done through the grip ring. So we have an integral inherent feature that automatically static grounds the fitting to the pipe. You're going to hang it just like you would hang any other piping system. If you're doing that exposed to sprinkler and you see there's a little deflection you don't like, take a rubber mallet and just hit it and move it. And then when it's back in place, repress it, you're good to go.
So you don't see the metric anywhere else then, other than the cruise ships?
That's basically, let me see, that is all I have seen.
Okay.
There's a company that's up in the New England area that handles a lot of that business, Worldwide Metrics.
Mm-hmm.
So if ever we needed that, I would ask you to call them, price in the cost of the jaw, let's call it $100 for a 1-inch metric jaw. Sell it to your end user, buy the fittings from them, they have them in stock, and you're going to use standard metric pipe, and all the installation procedures and application data is the same.
Okay.
You might say, as opposed to what? Well, as opposed to placing an inquiry through Viega, having Viega then take 3 or 4 days to get you the material,
Right.
and then there's still the question of the jaw. It's the same tool, just a different head.
Okay.
Good question, thank you.
And then if you have any questions, like when a customer says, well, can I weld near a MegaPress fitting? And then yes, welding adjacent to it must remain at least 4 inches away from the connection. Does anybody wonder why you would have to do it a certain distance away from the connection?
Oh, because of the ring itself.
Yeah, sealing element, yeah.
Yeah.
You don't want to heat that up and degrade it and destroy it. So that's essentially, you want to make sure that you're using good practices to reduce any kind of heat damage you could do to it. So put a cold wet rag on the fitting, do everything you can to reduce any chance of heat damage. Same thing with welding in line. So in other words, if you have a welding down here and your press fitting is back here, obviously they want you to do the welding first whenever possible, but sometimes you have to weld afterwards. So again, it has to be at least 3 feet away, and use those engineering practices to reduce heat near the fitting as well. So that way you can kind of make sure you're keeping the integrity of the fitting. And then, like Jim talked about, electrical bonding and things, that's the grounding that he was talking about. And then underground installations and all these things, again, it always comes back down to the authority having jurisdiction. And then there's your actuator that we don't have with us right now because my jaws are in Nazareth, Pennsylvania, but there's the 2 different styles. There's your scissors jaws and there's your what they call the clamshell jaw. So these are for the larger pipe diameters. These are for the 1/2 inch up to 1 1/4 inch.
1 inch. 1 inch, yeah.
Yep, and then there's your actuator that goes inside where the jaws would normally go, and then this would press on this end of the jaw. So the actuator presses right here. And the beauty of having an actuator on the tool for the larger diameters is that you don't have to approach the fitting from directly in front. You can come up sideways to it and still press the fitting. Okay, you see what I mean? Because sometimes with the jaws, I have the direct jaw there, so I have to approach it directly on. I may not have as much space because it's more of a concealed fitting. So with the larger, you obviously have that advantage. And Rigid makes those for 1/2 inch up to 2 inch as well. They have the jaws, clamshells. I saw them the other day. I was surprised nobody told me. And I saw them. I said, wow. Now you can tell guys 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, 1 inch. You can get in there with clamshells as well. Okay. Any questions about that? And there we go. And there's just labels. The MegaPress warranty, 10 years from the date of the installation, if it's an approved application. Okay. So if somebody uses our product outside of an application that's approved, there is no warranty. And there's no warranty on threaded fittings that I know, right?
There's a 1 year.
1 year?
Domestic valve wire.
Okay.
And how we came up with 10 years, we just wanted to make a difference. I mean, the systems are being designed for 30, 40 years life cycle. And the pipe is gonna fail before the fitting does. So that's how we came up with 10 years. We just wanted to make a splash. From an inside sales perspective, some of the questions that you get, can you Does anybody wanna share with us, any of the common questions you get?
Yeah, like how long are those seals gonna last?
That's a great question. Once we encapsulate, like we were pressing in this room, we're going to capture what's ever in the air forever around that sealing element. So it's going to, again, the sealing element is gonna last longer than the pipe because the only thing that could attack it is what's in the line. So we standardized on FK, which is like a Viton for most of our MegaPress applications. It handles continuous temperatures 280, and then on excursion 350. And how we define excursion is a 24-hour period of time. So that sealing elements, guys will say, oh, O-rings. No, it's a sealing element. Sealing elements, when they're compressed and then you take the compression off of the elastomer, that elastomer is going to return to its originally manufactured shape. So where does that apply? We have a thermal expansion in the line. So you're going to see that the mechanical strength, as Mike pointed out, comes from the grip ring. The likelihood that we're going to get vertical separation is almost zero. But that sealing element is going to see that line when it expands and contracts. So that's why we designed that sealing element to outlast the pipe. 3 different sealing elements. EPDM, if you need the NSF rating. When we submitted to get the potable water rating, we did it with our EPDM material. We also did it with our 316 metallurgy. So 316 EPDM essentially is going to tell us that this is for potable water. Now, the other sealing element is the HMBR, which is hydrogenated nitrobutadiene, which is Buna. So I mean, I used to work inside sales, so I know you're getting that call. Buna, so I would just call it Buna. HMBR is the ASTM reference for Buna, but the guys in the field don't know it as HMBR, they know it as Buna. EPDM everybody knows about. So the other questions you might get is, okay, what's the pressure rating of that fitting? If it were me, I would tell everybody that we pressure test to 600. But code's going to dictate to us what the pressure rating of that fitting is. If it's a water system, code's going to tell you that's a 200-pound fitting. If it's a gas system, code's going to tell you that system's designed to ANSI 125-pound standards. So it's 125 PSI. But we do jobs, we did the job, Mike was talking about seismic testing. We had to do seismic testing, and because of the high rise, 67 stories, the static pressure in the building on the heating side took us to over 300 PSI. So the engineer rejected us because all of our submittals, and we all have our submittals on your PCs, right? If not, leave us with your email addresses, and we'll make sure that there's only 5 or 6 that you need to have, would be readily at your fingertips. And those submittals are going to say that's 200-pound rating because of code. But we rated the system to 400, wrote a letter to the owner, engineer, contractor, identified every fitting on that project is now rated to 400 PSI. So that's another question that I think that you're going to get. In a perfect world, every post-end of every conversation, if the time allows it, I would ask because this is a high margin product for comparatively to within your arsenal, I would ask if time permits, is that what are you doing for press? Because this is so hot right now. And the things that are coming, refrigeration's coming, med gases, like we're approved for lab gas, hydrogen, nitrogen, But human consumption requires a completely different approach to this world. We do it in Europe. So coming our way within the next 2 years is going to be med gases. And that's going to be Katie bar the doors. I mean, your phone is just going to ring off the hook. We haven't been trained in it yet, but once we're trained in it, we'll come back and we'll spend some time on it because nobody else has it. When Viega introduced a system, they always give you one leg up. They always make sure that you're the first one talking about it. And then now you can go to Lowe's and get a copper fitting 2 inches and smaller. They all try to duplicate what we've all been able to do with Viega over the years. The biggest thing is that leak detection system. 100 times out of 100, guy commissions a system, he's testing with water. he's gonna know before he went home that day, he forgot to press a joint. That picks up his butt so much. So now other manufacturers don't do it the expensive way. What Viega does is that they actually make sure on a copper ProPress item, we actually hydroform cast into the metal a little dimple behind the sealing element, so that if you forget to press a joint and you test with water, water wire draws behind the sealing element and drips to atmosphere, calling your attention to it. It's 100% reliable. Other manufacturers notch out the sealing element, and actually they use it, they call it an O-ring. So cross-linking, the curing method that goes into that elastomer, all that stuff is different. They actually notch out little pieces of rubber, and then when they put their pipe in, the idea there is that they're going to drip when they test. And installers are telling us in the field that those little notches have to line up a certain way for it to drip, that it's not reliable. And if they get a false positive reading just one time, they go home and then overnight, pipe opens up, they're pumping water onto the floor, and people get upset with that.
Case in point, when I was up at State College last week doing a lunch and learn for their whole renovation department, we had 12 techs in there and a couple engineers, but they had told us about an incident that happened only 2 years ago that was basically using a competitor's ProPress type, meaning in copper, and that basically it held for 2 years before it finally let go. It gave a false positive the day they pressure tested it, and then 2 years later they come in on a Monday morning. Why is it always a Monday morning, right? But that thing had leaked all over the place, and it was not good. So a ProPress unit like ours would always tell you before you left the job site that it's completely pressed, and if you forgot, you'll know it. And that's why
They did the Pentagon, just like in this beautiful conference room, they had sprinkler work overhead, and it opened up over a weekend, and it pumped water onto a general's conference room table. So he then, his engineering group, got together with Viega, and they designed that smart connect that we're talking about, and that's why we now have a reliable leak detection system. And he ripped out all the fittings that were already installed by the contractor at the Pentagon, and they put all new fittings in with this feature that we're talking about. So the things that are important to the guys is that if they've decided, and I'll stop here, Mike, because you can't shut me up sometimes. If you get a customer that he's open to press, he can't afford to slow down. Because these press fittings are 10 times more cost than a standard traditional, solder cup or mallow iron threaded fitting or a weld fitting. And so now the good news of that is we're now participating in margin that we could never participate in before. When a guy spends a lot of money on labor, we're not making any money off of that. Well, now we're making money off the fitting, because it takes 7 seconds. He's flying through a job now. We did that job, it was 280 feet of 2-inch MegaPress G, and there was 2 guys, it was a day and a half. The job was slated for 7 work days. So they did what they would have normally spent 7 or 8 days on. Took them a day and a half. Now we're making money off of the sale of this fitting. That's a lot more money than a traditional fitting is. And so that money that used to be in labor now gets transferred into our ability to make money.
Does anybody ever get a chance to offer any kind of lead to a customer? In other words, they say, hey, have you looked at, if they're buying black iron pipe, and you say, hey, have you ever looked at the MegaPress system? And they're like,
yeah.
no. Okay, so we're not sure, trying to see in your world,
Yep.
if there's any chance that you get those kind of interest, then all of a sudden you give it over to Vic, or you give it over to Larry or somebody like that.
Or you close on it yourself. That's what
Find out if they're interested or not.
apprentices are telling us.
Yeah.
If they do business with NIPCA, there's a boneyard on every job. So the apprentices are allowed at the end of the quarter to gather up all that copper scrap and go and scrap it for metal, right? So then they get pissed off at us because there's no So there's kind of a balance here, and they're not shy. These guys will tell you exactly what they like and what they don't like. So we do the fitter training and we do the plumbers training, and I think in the end, we walk away feeling better and stronger than they do.
The only thing I really have to use your guys' pipe is in the regular stainless, right?
ProPress.
Well, can we talk about that?
I think we should, because it's right away, we might be able to help you get a sale today or tomorrow even, but it will just obviously touch lightly on that specific question.
Well, I'll be real quick. What we're talking about is copper tube systems. So we have two product silos, copper tube, iron pipe size. So iron tube, half through 4 inch, copper tube systems, half through 4 inch. We will always support your purchases for as long as you're buying it. But the industry is moving to a iron pipe size stainless. So we're half through 4 inch, skid 5, skid 10, skid 40. Why not 80? You asked that question earlier. 80 has obviously a Schedule 80 body wall. You put that fitting in that system, it's going to work as long as the pressures and temperatures are within the capabilities of the fitting. But now my skid 40 body wall is in that high pressure system, and I don't like it, because now we're the weak link in that whole system. So now, here's how to approach that. Your installer wants to do a quick repair job, because we make extended slip couplings that have a height like that. So guys love that, because they cut pipe, they line it up, they slide the slip coupling on, they bring it back, and they press, and now they've got maybe an hour into the repair that they would normally have spent 5 or 6 hours in. That's up to him. If he knows it's on a condensate return line, it's not aggressive, pressures are 80 pound, he knows it's going to work. It's his system. So I would say to him, it's not an approved Viega application, Sked 80, but if you want to do it, it's your system.
Right.
He doesn't. It's not like a lot of guys aren't concerned about that. So back to the copper tube. Our copper tube stainless business, since we came out with MegaPress stainless, is substantially reduced. So we have, and this is what Viega's production people have said, because we're making these fittings in McPherson, Kansas now, is that as long as your customer is buying that particular part number, we're going to continue to support it. But like we saw, we had a lot of ProPress copper items discontinued. And every time we do a price listing in the spring, you guys know better than anybody else, we do another one in the fall. And oftentimes you'll see that they're discontinuing some copper items because nobody's using them anymore.
Okay.
That's eventually, maybe 10 years from now, going to happen on the ProPress stainless side, because the iron pipe MegaPress stainless
Right.
is such a much better solution for your
Okay.
customer. And also you're going to be able to use your own Sked 5, Sked 10 plain end pipe right off the shelf out there.
Any other questions? So you guys are all experts now.
Sometimes the question comes up about valves, and I know this is mainly just fittings. On the MegaPress side, are you guys planning on doing any?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, what is it, July, I think I was told that they're gonna have a system.
We're going to spend our time on, we're getting ready to introduce a comprehensive half through 4 inch valve solution, addressing the bronze side of things, addressing the NSF requirements, and then when you get into the industrial side, we're going to be, like Mike pointed out, we're going to be introducing it'll be 2 inch and smaller at first, carbon steel and stainless solution. And I was out in Denver a couple of weeks ago, and the only thing that I was really encouraged about, because coming out with a Me Too product is not what Viega does, but it seems like that's what we're doing, is we're playing catch up on it, except for on the gas side, we're taking a bronze center section. Remember, you don't have to worry about the similar metals on gas, you don't have to worry about electrical current like electrolysis because it's not a water system. They're gonna have a very competitive, with a bronze center section, isolated with carbon steel press ends, that's just gonna revolutionize the industry. And it's gonna be probably a third of that cost. To have gas pressure ratings, when you get on the building side of the meter set, it always drops below 5 psi. Generally, it's like 14 inches of water column, which is less than 2 psi. So these 150-pound valves that are designed for 285 psi, it's just it's an overkill. If you look at Apollo's, are you Apollo for valving? I think we are, aren't we?
We're not a stocking distributor, but we are a distributor.
I think you're red and white for.
But yeah, as far as what we do for our regular press, it's red, white, and Milwaukee.
Okay.
So.
Well, let's talk about that. So, from our perspective, we're going to have a valve that's 1/3 the cost or less, that is designed for gas applications. So you would never take a valve for water service that has a bronze center section with carbon steel press ends. But in the gas system, it's perfectly suited for it. So they're going to be introducing that next week. Actually, we're out for our annual, where you go out to our corporate facility, and that's another thing that we want to talk about, is to get people to visit our training center. We just upgraded our training center in Nashua, New Hampshire. So it's like 6 hours far from here.
Field trip.
We're putting customers in a van and taking them up there, taking them to baseball games and out to dinner, wine and dining them. Then they're able to see, okay, how am I transitioning from one system to the next? They can do all this hands-on. So it's one day to get there. It's a half a day in classroom the next day, and then a field trip, usually to a baseball game, and then the next day they travel back again. Viega picks up the cost on all that. And it gets, especially good customers, it gets them to realize that they made the right decision when they came through industrial piping systems, as opposed to your competitors. So if you see that would be anything of interest for you, we even have a new training facility in Denver. I was just out there. It is really cool. So it might be something that you'd be interested in doing. It's not boring either. You might think, half a day in a classroom, to learn how to pull a trigger? No, it actually goes a little more in depth than that.
It's really good stuff. All right, I guess that pretty much sums it up.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Very nice.
Thanks for all your
presentation.
business.
Thank you.
Do people ask for press, or do you have to bring it up with them, or?
They usually ask for it. Like I said, there is times that when they give you a good list of copper or sweat or something, or, and you'll say, have you ever used the press, or can you use press, or that kind of thing.
That's excellent that you do that.
Some of them's the old timers and they just won't switch.
No,
You
I
know?
we get that.
So,
Yeah, we see that too.
Yep.
Yeah, but you never know when
yeah,
it's
you
gonna
never know.
happen.
Yep.
Yeah, I had a number of companies last year that converted over to our system. We had a special offer where we had them come up with a job name, a specific job, and I was able to get them $500 worth of fittings for free. I said, it's like getting a free drug to try it before you buy it.
That's cool.
And bottom line is, there was quite a number of people who took me up on that offer last year, and now they're using, and they're addicted to MegaPress now. They're using it on almost every single excuse they can now. They don't want a thread anymore. That's what it is, just getting them in the initial jump, to go from not using it to using it. It's, once they do, then they return the orders return for orders.
I think the press tool price probably keeps a lot of the smaller guys from getting into it.
Some of them, but I have some guys out in Cambria County. Cambria County is a very poor county in Pennsylvania. There's nothing in there. I think the most expensive place there is a new Sheetz gas station. But and by the way, Sheetz uses our product MegaPress on all their newer construction, and the ProPress, of course. But having said that, this guy has two tools. He has the 340, and then he has the 210, which is a smaller, more compact tool. But he's just a one-van guy, and he uses both MegaPress and ProPress like nobody's business. Especially those old homes where you have the radiators in them and the black iron pipe going up between floors. He is pressed in areas where because it's such an old system, he would have had to tear out the floors and cause more damage to the house, whereas before now, you can just cut into the pipe, put that, whatever fitting he's putting on, press, and he's out.
Yeah, that 210, is that the PEX connector one that you can
Well,
use on the?
the thing is, if you have a 210, which is, it's just like this
Yeah.
looking, but it's a smaller and all.
Yeah, it just
and
does up to 1 inch.
Yeah, it does up to inch and a quarter.
Inch and a quarter, that's
Yeah,
it.
and the only advantage to that is that, yeah, if you never do 2 or 3 inch, then you don't have to worry about having a bigger tool, you just use the one that's suited for the job, and the 241 is the newest tool, that's the stick tool that Rigid came out with, and that's really a good tool, cause that baby there is priced right, and it's really a good tool for all things Viega.
But the inline branch connector tool, is that coming out?
Yeah, I would think that would be a whole different lunch when we have all the facts and stuff.
That's that thing
sandwiches.
that you had me.
No, more sandwiches. More knowledge.
What we're talking about is instead of a weld-a-lit, we call it a
Yeah.
press-a-lit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
That's pretty slick.
we, I wanna call Chanel that. Yes, it's out, Sked 10, it's out, but it's only with a 3/4 inch female branch. And, you know, so if you wanna drop, you know, thermometer or temperature, differential temperature.
Well, he had somebody come to the counter the other day,
They were
wanting.
looking for
Oh,
that type of
did you?
application.
Yeah,
Was
and
it
he came
HP
into
McClure?
me, and I'm like, I have no clue what you're talking about.
Yeah,
And then
It's
we,
last year, HP McClure, was that HP McClure again, or?
Well, we
yeah.
show it on our slideshow downstairs.
Okay.
So sometimes
So
when the
they're
guys
at
are
the counter-
waiting,
Oh,
they're
does that need
seeing.
to come off of there?
Well, no,
Well,
I
Jason-
think you have to generate the interest, and then they'll wait for it, and so, cause a lot of people are waiting for our refrigeration fittings, they're like dying, because they know our product's good, and they just wanna have that as another alternative, because they have our tooling system.
So what you can buy now is Sked 10 in that 3/4 inch configuration, period. So 3 months from now, we'll have everything up and running, but that's where we are right now. Do you ever get a question, is like on a copper system, you know, what is the difference between you and NIPCO? Because now you have a Korean manufacturer, Jungwoo, that is tied to the Mueller name brand. So apparently Mueller bought, to be able to say you're a Korean manufacturer, you have to buy 1/3 of the company or whatnot. So apparently Mueller went out and did that. So here's how I would answer it, is that on a copper system, the number of configurations and approved applications are limited. NIPCO, they only have an EPDM sealing element. So you can't, they don't have HMBR, they don't have FKM. So there's a whole lot that they can't do. They don't have reducing tees. So when a contractor is looking at our pricing, and he says, well, you know, the pricing is higher than NIPCO. Yeah, it's gonna be. You know, because NIPCO's quoting you a reducing tee they can't provide. So by the time you actually do fit out the system, you're gonna have to push down all your reducing tees. You know, so there's things that we can talk about that are tangible items. I mean, the intangible is, you place an order, no, let's say, contractor places an order with you, let's say it's 35. You're gonna have 80%, maybe 90% of it on your shelf. So you're shipping next day. Then you're gonna place an order with Carlisle, you're gonna pick up the following day, so the contractor now, within 3 days, the order is complete. Matchline down here just did a job with the and it took him 6 weeks. And he had to push his tees down. So he evaluated it the way he should have. See, when these guys are, the reason they really like press is that when they're gonna estimate a job in advance of the work, they know precisely how much labor goes into it. So they can trim and streamline their processes. Now, if you're in the field, you don't know whether that's gonna take 15 minutes to weld or an hour and 15 minutes to weld. You can't really tell. So these guys are loving press because they can pinpoint to the dollar what their total installed cost is. So that really disappointed him to find out that he had to actually push down his and he was also the guy that commented on the building yard. So there's things that if I was an inside salesperson and somebody said, yeah, your pricing is too high to NIPCO, I would say, yeah, I would expect to be. And then now you've got Mueller, Jungwoo, the Korean manufacturer. Again, the learning curve starts all over again. NIPCO actually started to catch up with us Then there's something that has to do with the tolerances. Like after, we saw a lot, 2" 90, pressed, that you could grab it by your hand and move it and spin it. You can see that when we press, we're deforming the fitting and the tubing together. We're actually reshaping the fitting. So the likelihood that we're going to be able to spin a pressed fitting is almost zero. Those are the principal differences between us and NIPCO.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let us know if you need submittal data or you need to have this